What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Bred To Build podcast, a project dedicated to sharing the stories of the people who build and those who help move construction forward. If you like what we're doing and want to support us on the journey, all we ask is you hit that little subscribe button. My name is Brett Goen, co-host of the Bred To Build podcast, founder of Hammer. Today, I'm joined by my new co-host, Keith Calloway Jr., which I'll be giving you guys the inside scoop on. Keith, give us a little bit of an intro on you.
Well, what's up, guys? Keith Calloway Jr. I'm the CEO of K&L Industries, where we run an award-winning paving company out in Oregon. Excited to be on the podcast as a new co-host. I'm looking forward to bringing some incredible guests, sharing some material, and letting you guys get to know me and me to get to know you.
Awesome. Well, this is going to be an awesome episode. I'm pumped for this. Got the new co-host Keith kicking off season 2 with us, and also my previous co-host Matt Panella, MattBangsWood, on the show today. And we finally get to interview you, Matt. You're so reluctant to share your story, so now I get to grill you.
I'm digging the season 2. That sounds good.
It sounds good, right? And by the way, guys, if you're new here and want to learn a little bit more about Keith, we actually had him previously on the show a few episodes ago. Episode 35, if you want to check that out. Pretty awesome comeback story, kind of, burning everything to the ground and building a multi-million-dollar company along the way, which has been an impressive decade-long journey. But definitely recommend going and listening to that episode to learn a little bit more about him. So now we get to turn the tables, and the pressure's on for Mr. BangsWood, or Matt BangsWood. So
Mr. BangsWood it is.
Yeah, that's got a flow. I like that.
It does. It does.
You got to rebrand now.
Yeah, you've graduated into that, Matt. Let's get into it. I think there's two things maybe that I just want to address before we go further and kind of dig in. But I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering, if you're a longtime supporter, that is, you're probably wondering a couple things. One, is Matt finally going to share a story on the podcast? The answer is yes, and we're pumped about it. But two, is Matt graduating from the podcast? Yes. Matt and I have been good friends for the last 4 to 5 years coming up through social media. It's been awesome getting to know him. But some of his commitments, I would just say, with family, YouTube, building and everything, he just really wanted to double down on those areas. So yes,
Correct. But before you go any further, I do want to say this is the second thing I've graduated from, the first being kindergarten.
Well, let's go, baby.
Never did the high school thing, but this is a good moment for me. I'm proud.
Does it count if you went through twice?
Does it count?
Really?
I'm asking for a friend. I'm asking for a friend. Calm down.
Man, here I was excited to be back.
No, we're pumped to have you on, man. You're a big supporter. I'm a big supporter of you. And now we get the inside scoop on Matt BangsWood. So let's rock and roll. Matt, I want to start kind of around the entry into the trades. I think you have a pretty unique upbringing. I know you've had some pivotal moments in your earliest years that kind of influenced your journey, whether it was your grandpa, your dad, some naysayers along the way, that probably fueled both your inspiration and kind of desire to make something out of yourself. But tell us a little bit more about that journey getting into the world of framing.
Well, it starts a long time ago. My grandfather was a mason by trade. Very, very talented fella. Got into framing, built many homes turnkey. My dad, my uncle, pretty much everybody born under that man worked with him at some point in time. And I think that's awesome. My dad stuck with it the longest and is still building today. So growing up, seeing both of them pretty much be able to turn a pile of wood into something really cool, like somebody's home, or a half pipe for me, or pretty much anything I wanted when it came to building a ramp or a dirt bike jump with a tractor, they could do. And that was really cool to me. And kind of seeing what you could get when you work with your hands, that rewarding career path, that clicked a little bit later on, but that was awesome too. So I would say both of them were huge in me initially getting into the trades. And ultimately what happened was, in high school, I had a very shitty guidance counselor that told me that I wasn't going to make it very far. We had our first daughter at 14 and 15, and this guy was just a dick. He didn't care whatsoever. Told me that if I didn't make it through high school, into college and beyond, that I wasn't going to make it. And I had a baby on the way, and that baby ended up having a lot of health complications. So we were in the hospital for like the first 6 to 8 months of her life. And I was out of school at that time. Once we got through with all that, I needed to make money. And how did my family make money for decades prior? Building shit. So I told my dad that I wanted to get a job as a Domino's delivery driver. And that was the end of it. I went to work the next day because that wasn't an option. And that was when the journey began.
Didn't you? I mean, one thing that I was kind of curious about, did you have the opportunity to work alongside your grandfather much too, or is it mostly
For a
your
little bit.
dad?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I labored under him for a handful of projects.
Uh-huh.
I was his tender for a while we did some brick. Um, I built decks with him. I built fences, kind of like the odd and end jobs once he's done
Yeah.
building houses and takes a few things here and there. I worked with him, I'd say probably a couple dozen times from the time that I was 14 to 17, 18.
Mm. And you did a short stint at AutoZone too, didn't you?
I did. I got to a point where I was a little tired of the trades themselves. I'd been laboring for three or 4 years, and I was thinking I could do sales. I could do retail. And I was the youngest manager within our whole entire district. So I proved to myself that I could run something, and I made nothing. I was working 60, 70 hours a week. I was terribly unhappy. I never got to see my kids, never got to see my wife. I remember there's a couple trips that were really good memories for my wife, my daughter, going to the snow. And I always think, where was I? And then I remember I was cooped up selling alternators to people that really didn't like me.
Dude, that's wild. So when you started out, you didn't go at 14 and start a business.
No,
You had some years in there.
I did. And I had family to sort of work under and get my footing.
Yeah. So talk to me a little about like when you started. When did you start working for yourself? And like what was that transition from, the AutoZone manager to, Matt
So
Bangswood?
we're still family owned and operated. So I still work with my pops. So
Okay.
theoretically, I've never been out on my own. My dad started in business 2017 and had absolutely nothing. It was a license, brand new, no connections, no nothing. And we went into it together. Prior to that, there was a big gap in time from my grandfather contracting to my dad getting his license. And before he got licensed, me and him worked on multiple different crews, kind of bounced around. We pieced some stuff prior. So if anybody knows what that is, we really had to work our ass off because we didn't make money unless we worked hard. So we went through that. And when he got licensed, we really had no connections, nothing to build off of, no foundation. So it was him knowing the trades, him understanding how stuff gets built pretty damn well, and me hoping that I could piece together an invoice to send off to somebody.
So when you're talking about that, like I love the polar like the similarities between you and your dad and my dad and I, because like my dad knew how to do the work,
Yep.
but he had no idea how to get into the 21st century of work. And when you're talking about like your dad knows some of the stuff to do. And for those of you who don't know, this is California. And if you've never got a license in California, it is like an entirely different level of intense, first and foremost. So what did you guys do when you guys started the business and you started looking at, well, how do we fill the bucket of available work?
So first off, it was me and him, and we just laughed about this the other day. We started with the easiest thing we could possibly get, which was like little fence jobs and odds and ends here and there, some facial repair here, a little fence there, and that's how we survived for a long time. And pricing wise, like if we were to do something time and material, we'd charge flat out like $40 an hour because we had no idea. Now we're close to 100. So it was a big learning curve. And I think in the beginning, that's probably the best way to start. We got a single house contracted to frame. And I remember thinking, holy shit, we made it. Like this house, and it was tiny. It was awesome. But like we got that one house, and that was like as soon as we got it, I remember he was pumped because prior to that, we had both sort of worked under other people. he got this and was like, this is really what it could be. There's good money in this. We got a nice project here. We built that one, and we both kind of agreed that we didn't want to go back to shitty Finch jobs and terrible clients that want to nickel and dime us. And from there, it was, that's what we're going to stick to. We were a framing company. We did concrete framing, siding, but we were tired of the little shit. So we really positioned ourselves and ultimately faked it till we made it as a bigger framing company. We could take on your project. Whether we had the guys or not, we knew that we could do it.
I mean, a lot of people kind of see what you're building now. Matt, I don't think I've ever scrolled to you one of your very first YouTube videos. I'm actually
You
kind of
should.
curious to,
You should.
to do that now. But you obviously didn't start there. You were talking about the small projects, the
Little cookie
fences,
cutter.
the little cookie cutter ones. So pretty small residential jobs in your early days. And I think that's where a lot of people, but you obviously didn't start where you are now, because I think a lot of people will come along your YouTube and they're maybe comparing their kind of first initial steps to you framing these insane customs now that, you know, it's really hard to break into. But what do you think kind of helped bridge that gap from getting, you know, some of those fence jobs to, did you just land one and then that kind of put you on the map, or how did you work your way into those big customs?
The thing about it is we knew how to do it. It wasn't like we got a big custom and was like, holy shit, now we got to learn how to do it. We knew
Yeah,
how to
yeah.
build. Prior to that, I mean, when we were working for other people, I think one of the last projects that we did before he got licensed and really branched out, he was licensed when we did it, but was like a 14,000 square foot medical building. And I remember there was like 48 arches in the thing that were all like 8 feet wide. I cut each and every one of them. And the place was big. We had like 13 guys on it.
Oh,
So
wow.
it wasn't that we had to learn how to build custom. It was just getting into that market is such a hard thing to do. And when we positioned ourselves as this premier framing company where we come in and we make your shit right and we make it clean
Yeah.
and we're better than the next guys, I think that really helped push us into a bracket where it was like, hey, these guys are killer. Let's
Mhm.
use them. So word got around a little bit. And I don't think there was one project specifically that did it, but I really, it sucks to say because some people don't like the whole fake it till you make it thing, but we positioned ourselves as that, and that's exactly what we became. We started with one little project, and I posted the hell out of that thing on social. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that was what did it, but that led us to the next framing project, and then the next one, and then they got bigger and bigger.
So I have like seen you grow over the last several years. I know you have or had, and sometimes even more times than other, but you have some younger guys on the crew. Now, in kind of those early beginning days, were builders just heads over heels because you were a young framing crew that could seemingly run laps around maybe other folks? Or did you really just have to, again, fake it till you make it and really prove yourself on those jobs to keep breaking into that market?
That's kind of a tough one because while seeing young people do this is really cool, at the same time, people also see it and think, do they have any clue of what they're really doing? There's two sides to that. Um, what I dealt with the most was in the beginning, and still to this day, I do a lot of our estimating, a lot of our proposals, all of our contracts. And now that I'm pushing 30, it doesn't happen so much, but 20 to 25, I had a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people that were clients of ours that kind of doubted the fact that I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And when it came to numbers and stuff, it's like they wanted to talk to my dad, but I'm trying to explain to them like I can better explain this to you than he can. He's amazing with the work, but let me just talk you through the numbers. So
So,
if anything, there was a bit of doubt. As far as the work goes, we've had a pretty young crew over the years. And I think if anything, people are happy to see a crew that isn't just filled with alcoholics and drug addicts on a job site. That seems to be
mm-hmm.
such a common theme. And especially out here on the coast, we're a very tight-knit little community. And there's a handful of crews that they're just known for being a little belligerent.
I gotta ask because this is just popping up in my head right now. But since you transitioned from production to custom, obviously those worlds are completely different. I've seen it on the my father's drywall sites. Man, it's a lot of rework. Anyways, we probably won't go into that. But is there anything that you kind of took away from doing production building that has helped you in the custom, even though those worlds are completely different in what they value?
One of the like the biggest takeaways that I've had in my career, and I've shared it probably a million times now. I watched a good friend of mine cut his arm off, and it ruined me. I had like PTSD. I heard him scream in my dreams for I don't even know how long. And that was the last of us running. We were all split up, broken up into little crews. We all got paid based on how much square footage we built. And that was the last of us pieceworking. And I remember that incident thinking, holy shit, like in a second, your whole life can change everything. And I just had a good friend of mine who's a PM fall and break his back in a couple of locations and puncture a lung. And this industry is fucking deadly. This industry can kill you. And I think if anything, working in that environment kind of taught me that that's a possibility. People seem to think they're like indestructible, and that's so far from the truth. Um, so I'd say it taught me that. It taught me to slow down, take your time, be safe. I've yet to have a crazy bad accident on the job site, and I take a lot of pride in that.
Wow.
Those are, I don't know. I've seen some guys get run over on the job site, right? Like not an arm, but like somebody's underneath the machine.
Yeah.
It changes you. Like
Oh, it
I don't
does.
I don't scream very often, but when I scream, it's because I'm like, what, have this PTSD moment where I'm like, this is about to happen. It does change you.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's the same way. If I see somebody, like we've had some new guys start out and they pick up a saw, and I do not think they should. And that is the only time I'll ever raise my voice is like, if you're about to hurt yourself, I don't give a shit how bad I hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
Put the stuff down. Like once you've seen people on the brink of death or dead, I think that it changes you. And I just talked about it recently. There's really not a project worth dying for.
It's one
So
way, good way to put it.
yeah. So outside of, I mean, you can't really compare like life to work, right? The question comes out like what are a couple of things or one thing as you transition from, the fake it till you make it? Like what we do in our business is we create one problem and solve it at a time, right? Like before you didn't have a contract, now you have a contract. And the funny thing is people want to talk to my dad because they were both named Keith. But if they talk to me on the phone, they don't realize that I'm the son. They think I'm the dad. And when I show up, they're like, hey, where's your dad at? I'm like, oh, he's not coming. I talked to you the whole time. They're like, what? That's wild. And so it's really about perspective. But like as you're getting into the business, as you're talking to new entrepreneurs and these guys that are considering the trades, what's something that as you've gone forward that you've leveraged to change the trajectory of your guys' business?
That's a good question. I think there's been a handful of things. I think one of the things is always treat ourselves and treat the company, treat the people within it as best as we possibly can. I feel like the people that you have working for you um, are a good representation of who you are as a business. So we try to have an upbeat and positive environment. Like I film for YouTube with these guys, so like we laugh, we have a good time, we joke about stuff all the time. That and then constantly networking to put ourselves in rooms that we want to be in.
Mm.
So I was talking to people back when we had that first little project and telling them like, hey, we have these services available if you ever need them. And I remember they kind of blew us off. And then years later, they're coming to us, hey, can you bid this project? So we knew where we wanted to be. And I think good environment, having a good time on site, laughing, joking, but also getting work done and knowing where we wanted to be. If we pushed hard enough, we'd get there. So I can't say that there's like one little secret as to how we got to where we were, but I don't know. Having a good upbeat attitude, good job site, people want to work for you. I think that's the key to growth.
And I'm sure documenting your builds has kind of altered the trajectory of everything too, which I want to get on more in a second, but I would imagine that that's been a pretty
It
big game
definitely has.
changer.
When people can see their home get built online and know the blood, sweat, and tears that went into each one of them and
Yeah.
how it was constructed, it definitely helps. And we've had quite a few from that.
So I'm kind of curious. You were talking about networking, and maybe this is a good bridge into this, but um, I mean, you're a big advocate of it, especially on the social media scene too, given that that's been a lot of your journey. in building your brand online. How do you approach networking and building in the, your contact and your Rolodex in the construction industry, since a lot of it has kind of been notoriously just a handshake industry? Or do you even think that's changing? How have you kind of approached it?
Oh, I don't think that's changing one bit.
Yeah.
I love how, like, off topic but on topic, my sister
Yeah.
is a cheerleader. We're at her high school game last night, and walking around, it's hilarious because every dad is just wearing some different contractor's clothing or gear, and it's like this big meetup. It's quite funny, but it's as simple as that, or going to the lumberyard and running into people that you know, or
Mhm.
maybe you want to know, whatever it may be. My dad is not a talker whatsoever. I will talk to whoever, whenever, about whatever. And I think that is kind of the biggest thing. Um, I talk to anybody I can. I don't care if you're an architect, engineer. We're going to talk about something building related. And I think that helps because your name obviously sticks with people and they don't forget you, especially younger people in the industry. I don't feel like we're all that common. So
Mhm.
as I've grown and as I've talked to random people at Home Depot, or that's where our painter, I've got a painter, I just talked to him today. He's painting a nice custom on the beach for me right now, and met him at Home Depot. Networking is just a matter of talking to people that you don't know.
That's that's amazing. I'm gonna jump into this content and like networking piece. So when you're talking about networking, you just brought into one. Like I believe you're capturing and your superpower is like your ability to connect with people brings you more opportunity than say somebody
Absolutely, it
else,
does.
right?
Yeah.
So when you're talking about creating content and it's a full-time job, like I am not anywhere under any rock living where I think that what you do um, on the social side is not also a full-time gig. But how do you balance that? How do you balance like doing your YouTube stuff, being a dad, doing the YouTube? Like, how do you do all of that? Because we tried. I'm gonna just straight up tell you, we tried, and I was like, I waved the white flag. It stressed me out. I had to find somebody else to do it because I didn't have enough time. And this is back when I was single, right? I didn't have a kid. I didn't have a wife. Like how I look at what you're doing and I'm in awe because you make it look really easy and it's really done well. And so my hat's off to you first off, but how do you balance all that?
I appreciate that first off. I
Fat can of Red Bull that he was showing us before we teed this off.
that helps
How
partially.
many more are sitting next to it? That's the real question.
That is
We
not
won't
a brand endorsement, by the way.
we won't pan over there. Um,
Uh, I love you, Matt.
Keith, you have anything that you like really love to do outside of work?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, I filmed skateboarding from the time I was 11. I started my first YouTube channel when I was 11 and I filmed skateboarding. That was my thing. I loved it. I broke more bones than I can count. Went from that to bike riding and we're hitting dirt jumps and filming stuff there. And I was always putting together something. And for me, the big thing was being able to capture a moment, put it all in there, and then have something that you could watch later on. It's like
Mhm.
home videos. You pull out the old VHS tapes and it's like a step back in time.
Hmm.
So for me, it was always about creating. And when I started with social media, it was phone pictures. Like you snapped a couple pictures on the job site with your phone, and that was it. And then it got into where Instagram switched to let's push video more. That was when I finally got to use everything that I've spent the last 15 years doing and really push it hard. So I loved creating prior to that. And it wasn't ever like, I want to be an influencer. It was, I filmed skating for years and I love the hell out of it. So when you bring cameras to a job site that probably shouldn't be there, you can make really cool shit. So for me, it was never a job. It was more so really fun to document and day to day, I mean, you get to tell a story, and that's how each day is for me. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I get to fill it all up and hopefully share some knowledge with people. So now it's definitely a job because I've been doing it for 7 years, and at some point you get tired of recording the same old wall framing day in, day out. I have an editor full time that lives down south. He takes a huge amount of work off my plate. And then my wife deals with the back end as far as any brand connections and things like that. So I delegate as much as possible so I can focus on
Yeah.
creating, and that's it.
I
Yeah,
remember when
that's
we were first kind of becoming buddies, you didn't want to delegate it at all. And because I
And
know you're
it,
pretty very particular about your content, which is good, but
I'm gonna tell you, it was hard. So Sean is my editor now. Good dude. I've known him for about 10 or 11 years now, since high school. And I had the hardest time with it. I originally hired him. I'm like, I want you to do my short format stuff, just edit my reels, like put together some
mhm.
small stuff, and that's it. I'll take care of the rest. And he told me, he's like, just let me do the long format. Let me put it together and show you. And he did one. And I'm like, dude, I'm gonna go ride quads with my kids, fucking edit this stuff. I love you. You're amazing. And it's been huge. So I'd say knowing what I wanted prior and then him being able to kind of replicate that helped me get away and get out and have fun.
There's a couple things I wanted to ask you. There was, I know a lot of maybe kind of your motivation was around bridging and wanting to be a creator from like filming the skateboarding videos, and now you get to apply that to framing and everything, like you were mentioning. But would when you were starting out on YouTube, was there any like big influential figures to you? Were you searching for a community, or was all that stuff just a byproduct of you creating and then kind of it opening up your eyes to kind of the greater community and world of like inspiration, let's just say?
So at the time when I started YouTube, Essential Craftsman was a thing. He was doing
Yeah.
good. Um, Kyle Stumpenhorse, RR Buildings was on there.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
he was going pretty. I think he was 200, 300,000 by the time I started.
Hmm.
And he was already documenting projects. And I don't know, there was just something about it. Instagram always seemed like a pissing match of mine's bigger, this is this, like I got the cooler site. Like, and then you go to YouTube and it's like you just get to watch Kyle like casually put together this big old post frame, and you're like, damn, nobody's talking shit. There's no like competition here. He's just having fun doing what he loves. And that was sort of what I wanted. So I would say there wasn't a whole lot.
Hmm.
A lot of the construction videos back in 2018, it was like Larry Hahn from the 90s that was repurposed and put from VHS to there. So I saw a little void that needed to be filled, and we filled it.
You on your journey so far, so far, I've known you for the last few years, and I can kind of anticipate your answer a little bit to this question. But have you ever kind of felt burnt out, and how have you kind of managed to push through that? Because I mean, you've been at it, man. And I think the biggest difference between a lot of people that I see come up is they kind of get these quick dopamine hits, and then when that trails off, and you really got to get gritty and push through, they seem to kind of fall off. But I mean, dude, you've been at this for like, I don't know how many years. I would imagine that you probably felt some speed bumps along the way.
No, it's been since like 2018, so we're going on 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And there definitely has been times, but the biggest thing, like honestly, I'm thankful for everything. Being able to create, being able to share. And the thing that keeps me going is knowing that, like, I don't know, man. I go through these down in a rut spurs where, like you're saying, I'm burnout. I don't want to do this anymore. And I'll go to Home Depot, go to pick something up, and somebody from across the way, Matt, I love what you do, man. And that right there, I don't give a shit how I'm feeling. That'll change my whole day.
Mm.
And knowing that some random person in a Home Depot parking lot, this just happened last week. I was picking up drywall for my shop, and this dude walks by. He's like, I love your videos, man. And right then, it's like, I don't have a clue of how many people have actually helped, how many people have learned from something I've put out there. And I think that when you step back and really look at it, um, it's enough to keep going. And that's our goal. I've always wanted to do that. I want to help out as many people as possible. I had a shoe in. I had my dad, I had my grandfather. I've been told the whole time that I'm the boss's son. Like, now I want to be the boss's son that spent freaking 10 years on YouTube and helped as many people as he could. And that's kind of what keeps me going.
that's all right. I just got back from World of Asphalt. From 5 years ago to today, dude, there were probably as many cameras there as there were people.
All right.
Right? Like there's guys with these contraptions hanging all over them. And 5 years ago, nobody, when you saw a camera, everybody stared and said, "What in the world are these
Yep.
people doing? What kind of weirdos are here?" Right?
When I went to IBS 2020, and that was how it was. I had a media pass and I had my little camera
Hmm.
rig with me. And I remember every company there was like, hey, come check out our stuff. Cause like cameras weren't all that big. And now, like, we were laughing our asses off. We're at World of Concrete with Diablo, and we walk in and we're sitting there looking at everything. There's like 10 guys standing there casually looking at stuff, and then there's like 15 cinema rigs behind each one of them recording a fucking saw blade that we've all seen a handful of times. Like, it wasn't like some crazy invention, but it's changed a lot over the years.
How's that feel to be like on the front end? I mean, your passion project is doing this.
See, the thing is, I don't want to down talk anybody. I feel like I do it for a different reason. I feel like a lot of people get into this because they want money. I feel like a lot of people are trying to get big because they feel like they have an opportunity here, which they do. But I want to do it because I enjoy helping other people and seeing, and this is going to get dark for a second. I've dealt with a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, things like that. I It makes me feel really good helping other people, whether it be giving money to somebody or uh, giving away tools, things like that. So for YouTube, it's the same exact thing. When I see people benefiting from something that I've put out, it's that same little dopamine hit. And it kind of just keeps me going, keeps me happy, keeps me from feeling super depressed and anxiety ridden. Um, so it's cool. I enjoy creating, but I feel like some people do it for all the wrong reasons, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that. People ask, like, we're a second chance employer. We want to bring sexy back, right? I want it to be cool to be in the trades.
Yeah.
And the reason, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, like my dad and I are hardly ever on our feed ever, right? Like the reason we
That's
want
good.
other people on there is because I want them to tell their story, and I want people to see that, hey, I also had some adversity, whether it was having a kid early or dropping out of high school or whatever it is. Like that's not going to limit your ability to earn and to achieve something. And I want people to know that, listen, like we had a boatload of people make a lot of money last year, like more money than they've ever made before. And they're buying houses, they're getting off probation. Like they're getting passports, which, a lot of people take that for granted. But when
Oh
you
yeah.
make stupid decisions as a kid, you're telling your story and your family's story, and you're like, hey, listen, like I actually should be a statistic that says my earning capacity is here because my education is
Yep.
here. But dude, you're on the front end of this, and I love that you're moving, like you're creating a wake behind you of people that are like at the beginning they're in it, right? That calm spot right behind the boat. They're in that, and eventually they move out on a wave with you, and they're like, Matt, check it out. This is what we're doing.
Yep.
Right? I love that. That's a great analogy of what you're doing. I'm proud of you. Like if nobody else says this, I'm
I
proud.
appreciate that.
I've told that to Matt so many times over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Look at that magic. I didn't know that you told him that. I think it's great. Like
MattBangsWood.
magic
go.
bangs wood.
Let's go.
No, you have to. You have to uplift those around you.
Yeah,
I strongly believe that.
dude, that is so. Like, if you were to go back and tell yourself something 5 years ago that you did that you now know. I mean, let's go back a little 6 years ago because I don't want COVID anywhere near this question.
Thank you.
Right. So if you were to go back and say, hey, there's a bunch of stuff heading towards you, and like you could give yourself one piece of advice inside the trades, outside of the trades, what would it be?
I think the biggest thing would be to probably slow down and enjoy things around you. I went through a long patch where it was working seemed like it just Monday through Friday connected, and it skipped the weekend and right back into it again.
Mhm.
And it was a lot that I missed out on. And I want to tell myself that it was a sacrifice for what we have today, where I'm able to take off time here and there to spend time with my kids and be there. Um, but I was so indulged in that whole, you need to be on the grind freaking constantly to get where you want to be, which I still truly believe is somewhat, I don't know.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I think you have to some extent, but I did it a little overboard. And I feel like I missed out on some good years of my oldest growing up, and um, some of the first years of my youngest as well. And looking back, that I just talked to a buddy of mine on the phone the other day, and he's telling me, he's like, I got girls, man. Like, he was saying he has little girls and he doesn't have boys to where he can't really do anything with them. And I told him, I'm like, man, I got two girls as well. there's plenty of shit you can do with them. Like, you just got to take the time out of your day to actually do this shit. Like, what, you didn't have a son, so you can't do shit with your kids? Like, I don't know. I felt like that was a bit of an excuse. So I would say be there for the kids, be there for your family. We have a couple that aren't here today that were here a couple years ago that I could have spent some time with.
I gotta ask you this, Matt, but I mean, I think this is a blessing and a curse. I think it's fuel, but you've kind of had a chip on your shoulder for as long as I've known you. Whether it's teachers saying you're gonna amount to little, the school advisor, maybe the internet trolls in the beginning days of, you know, putting their opinions all over your comment section, which I've seen countless screenshots of those.
In the
But
beginning, they still do that.
yeah, I'm just gonna say you're probably better at mediating it now. But I think you're a good example that with grit and some chips on your shoulder, you can definitely make something of yourself. And I think you have so much more in the tank. But do you think? And my question now is: do the chips still motivate you, or do you feel like you've kind of developed maybe a stronger purpose to keep you motivated for the long term? How do you view it? Like, if you want to get like just real honest right now.
I have the words "keep talking" on the back of my neck, and I felt that
Savage.
it fit for a few reasons. Social media is one of those places where I'm not saying I got keep talking on the back of my neck because of fucking Instagram or anything. More so that if people are talking about you, you're doing something right. And that's just how it goes. People aren't talking shit about somebody that works at Kmart because, well, they're not competition. But within like the construction industry, within social media, within life in general, people constantly have talked down on like every single step that I've made. And it sucks. But at some point, you realize that what they're saying is for other reasons other than the fact they really believe what they're saying. The high school guidance counselor, dude was a dick. Probably knew I wasn't going to go anywhere. And statistically speaking, I should have been a drug addict and sucked at life. Realistically, that's how it should have played out. It didn't. And I kind of went against those odds. But like the internet trolls, people talk shit about building to all of us that are on social. Keith, I'm
Mhm.
sure to you guys as well. You guys are doing this wrong. You're doing that wrong. And it's like, well, we're putting stuff out there and we're trying, and you're not doing any of those things. Um, so I feel like, yeah, I still have a chip on my shoulder. I still kind of have some hatred towards it, but it's used more as a fuel. It doesn't make me mad anymore. In the
Mhm.
beginning, I'd get comments that somebody told me that my tattoo on my left arm looked like a giant penis. And those things stick with you, man. But now I embrace the I filled in around it to where it doesn't look like that. But you embrace it at some point, and you know that it's
Yeah.
not for
Yeah.
any true reason.
Dude, I love that. So I have a saying that we talk about on a regular basis. Either you create or you consume.
Yeah,
There's
I
really
love that.
either you're on the side where you're creating a movement, you're creating opportunities, you're passing something on and you're building, or you're just a consumer where you just take. And the keyboard cowboys, I call them fans. That's what I'm like. Oh, the
There
fans
you
are out,
go.
they're out heavy today. Because I get it. Like, you're right. Like, the people who are doing things never talk crap about you.
Yeah,
They don't. They're too busy creating something else to have time to say, "Hey, Matt over there didn't put
yeah.
this the right kind of nail in it." Like, who cares, dude? I love that you're a creator. But when you're sitting in those moments, you talked about depression and you talked about how it goes. Like, take me back to where you found the keep talking mentality, because I think that's a really important point for people today, because social media is your highlight reel most of the time, and it's everybody else's highlight reel. So how do you take those thoughts and I mean, for a lack of better terms, how do you get power over them?
I've used social as like the biggest transparency thing that I possibly can have. There's a book. I don't know if you guys know who Russ is. He's a music artist,
Mhm.
and he wrote this book about getting out of your own head. And in that book, he talks about like, this is gonna sound so off topic, but like the Eminem rap battle, he wins because he talks shit about himself first, and then nobody has anything on him. That
Mm.
whole entire thing I've built so many things fucked up, and I'm being completely transparent because when you have 8 to 10 guys running around, shit's not going to get built perfect every time. And instead of me trying to hide those things and act like we're these perfect framers, I'd post everything. I don't care. You're mad that my guys fucked something up. We paid for it. We ate the cost, and I still posted it. Like, it was all about transparency. It's we're showing you what it's like actually on a job site, not this here's a bunch of arches that are super beautiful that went oh so well. I'm going to show you the one that got fucked up and looks like an egg. Like, that's the goal with all of it. So I don't know. It's been a tough one, but transparency I feel like helps out so much, and I think it also allows people to connect with you a little bit more.
Yeah, I love that. I call it the B rabbit
There
moments.
you go.
Right? Like, so I'll tell you a little story. I was a year sober, and this guy comes up and he says, "Hey, I'm kicking you out of your lease. I got this other person who wants to pay more." And I was like, "No, dude, we have 2 more years on this." And anyway, long story short, he at the end of this argument, he says, "I'm gonna tell everybody what you did." And I was like, what kind of a how horrible of an individual are you? I have done everything right for a year. And I kind of got like this indignant moment where I felt like a victim. And then I realized everybody who really mattered to me already knew what I did. And then at that moment, I decided that never was somebody else going to control the narrative of my life. So I started talking, like, you guys see my social now. There's nothing off the table. I was a
That's good. That's
terrible
the best
individual.
way you can be.
Yeah. And what it's done for me, I don't get the, hey, I love what you're doing in Home Depots because I'm not that guy. But when people are really in need, they say, hey, dude, how did you change? And I'm like, dude, that's a really tough question. I was tired. That's really the long and the short of it. And like, I get to connect with these people in these moments where it's pivotal. And it's because I've told the truth about my life. And I
And the
love
thing
that.
is they're able to look at you though, just from what you've posted on social, and understand that you're a safe place where they can go and
Yeah.
express that you're in the same fucking boat and
Yeah.
seek help from you. And that's got to feel rewarding. No, and
It,
especially in a dark time like that. Like, I'm just helping people with carpentry. I could tell you how to cut an arch. But like, when people are at the lowest of lows and feel like they can connect with you for help and guidance and getting through a tough spot, when 99% of the world out there is saying you're just gonna die a fucking addict, like that's huge.
yeah. It's about, I mean, you said it at the beginning of this, and you said your people, like the people are the most important piece. Connecting with people is what life is about, right? We all want three very basic things. We want to be seen, heard, and loved, right? And if you can offer, it's not appropriate to love people all the time, but if you can see them and hear them, then you do that long enough, then there's a relationship that offers the opportunity to love them. And I think that, to your point, like, I love that you didn't have a comeback story. You just started from the bottom, right? Like, you weren't ahead and then fell behind and then came back. Like, the chips were legit stacked against you.
Oh yeah.
And you have shown people the path out, and I think it's admirable. I've watched your journey, and I've really enjoyed it. And I think you're a human. I think that's what the whole thing that you were talking about, like vulnerability, show, like just being transparent. You're just making people understand that life isn't rainbows and butterflies all the time, dude. It's hard. Life is hard. Business is hard. Eight
Oh,
people.
a lot of it's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. You said 8 people, and I kind of chuckled. I was like, dude, try 41.
Exactly.
41. And I have every truck wrapped the same. So there are legit 10 calls a day about the people driving like a-holes. And they're like, they cut me off. I'm like, how is your life so good that you have to call somebody on that? Like that, I want your life. If you're calling to tell people somebody cut you off, right?
If that's your biggest problem, can we please trade spots?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt, I want to transition a little bit on support the youth, or supporting the youth. I know this is something that you're a big advocate for, both in donations of tools, putting out content, getting stuff into trade schools, etc. Probably the list goes on. But you know, one thing that I want to chat about is kind of like the impact of social media. There's kind of something that you're a big believer on, and I want you to dig more into this because I don't think we've really ever discussed it on the podcast before. But Um, I think social media, it definitely influences a lot of the youngsters. We see every tool hitting the market every single day. It's something new. They probably ask you for a lot of advice of what they should be using. And you've kind of mentioned to me, even like maybe off the record too, it's where it's like a lot of these kids come to me and they think they need the latest and the greatest just to get started. So maybe kind of like walk us through on some of your thoughts around this, because I think a lot of people feel a sense of like paralysis that they're not, MattBangsWood or building the biggest custom homes or having the latest and greatest tools.
If social media can do one thing, it's make you feel like you are an absolute nothing in this world.
Mm.
Everybody posts, like Keith was saying, the highlight reels. And that's why I've always wanted to show the not highlight reels, like the light got switched off and we cut this shit wrong reels. But that's probably the worst thing about all this is that these kids look up to a handful of these guys on there and see 2025 built GMCs, like $130,000 trucks that don't ever tow anything, and these fancy tools that aren't really all that needed. I have a few that I haven't been the biggest of fans of over the years. You don't need a $400 hammer. You don't need a $300 square. You don't need $700 bags. You need to understand how to use those tools before anything else. You have to walk before you can run. And most of these kids get into it, spend a boatload of money on tools. And that's really cool. You've got a Martinez M1 that's a truck payment, but you don't even know how to swing the thing. So I feel like that's where socials kind of got like a negative side to it. So I've really tried over the years to keep what I wear, keep what I have fairly minimal. Like the Badger set of bags that I have is like 280 bucks. All the
Mm,
tools inside, I could probably buy my whole setup for 500, 600 bucks. And I wear the thing
really?
year round. And that's huge to me. And that all started because very early on I had these kids that I worked with at a high school that was their first big thing was, yeah, as soon as I get out there, I'm buying a Martinez because they see Kyle rep it. They see
Hmm.
all these other guys rep it. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But that's what these kids look up to. That's what they want to be. And I mean, I can't blame them, but they have to focus on the right things. They have to focus on learning the trade and being able to do what they're supposed to do before they get all that stuff.
So what should they be influenced by? I think the shiny object syndrome is definitely a thing through social media. I mean, I have a Martinez hammer, and it's
I know you
honestly,
do. And see, you're
and
just
it's
like them. You can't even swing the fucking thing. That's the problem.
it's debatable, but
I love you, Bragg. I love you. But I think they should be inspired by people like Jared Kaufman, who's young
yeah.
and eager and out there pushing. Like that kid can run circles around me with math and he's on it. He's tack sharp. And I feel like that's what they should aspire
Mm,
to be, is efficient with this stuff. When I first started in the trades, my big thing was I was put on a little cut station, make cuts, give the guys what they need. And that was cool and all. But I wanted to be the person on the roof. I wanted to be the person assembling stuff, the person that knew how all this shit went together. And that takes time. It's not something you're going to learn overnight. It's something that took me years. And now I'm to the point where we start a project and like our lead that worked with us for years now, he'd ask me, Junior, how are we doing this? Like, what are we doing here? And I loved that. I love being able to strategically put together a house that most people couldn't. And that to me is worth 10 times more than look at the shiny new tools I got.
yeah. What's been some of the most
And that-
rewarding part about all of this, whether it's being a framer, content creator, helping folks? Maybe a better question would be like, what's the biggest piece of advice for folks wanting to break into the industry? Like, if you were to give yourself some advice of like, you're breaking in, maybe you don't have the family background or the foundation, where do you start?
We are on this planet for 60, 70, maybe 80 years if you're lucky. And so many people live day to day. I just had somebody message me today and said they switched from retail to now they're going to school to be an electrician at the age of
Mm,
37. And that's everything. You can switch it up at any given time and completely change your trajectory just by one simple decision. I want to learn how to do this. I want to learn how to do that. And I think that a lot of people get stuck with comfort and they're okay with where they're at, but they wish they could do something else. And I don't think anybody should get to the end of their life and think, well, what if I would have done that? And I think that's the biggest thing. Find what you want to do and go after it.
Yeah, I love that. So you've obviously spent you've you've obviously spent a long time doing what you're doing. And I sense you have like you're like a well that has barely been tapped. So where do you see in the next few years, Mr. Banging Wood or Matt Banks Wood or whatever you're going to go by? Like, where do you see yourself?
That's a really good question. And to be honest with you, I can't answer it because every single year, I think that like I'm where I should be. I think that I'm not necessarily content, but like in a really good place. And the next year, something better happens, something bigger happens. What I knew 3 years ago is a joke compared to what I know now. And every time I think like, man, I'm killing it right now. And then looking back, I'm like, man, you sucked. So to be honest with you, I couldn't tell you because I 3 years ago I couldn't tell you where the hell I'd be at today. Um, I have some real estate that I'd like to play with. I have some out of state stuff that I want to do. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. With my editor back to being like nonstop full time for me, we're putting out videos 2 to 3 times a week, and that's not stopping in the foreseeable future. So the goal right now is to just put out as much stuff as possible. I've got this super fun beach house project that structurally makes no sense, and I've got it completely torn to pieces. Um, so yeah, just continue documenting, continue sharing what I enjoy doing, and I don't know. We'll see where we end up.
I gotta ask though, like, do you want in the foreseeable future over the next couple of years just to keep honing in on and I mean, it seems like the ceiling for this is kind of unlimited for you. But do you want to keep stacking brick by brick on the YouTube and the framing stuff, or do you kind of have desires to go into the actual custom home builder stuff? Like, could
No,
we
what
ever imagine a Matt Banks Wood on like actually building customs and being like a GC, or do you kind of
I
just want
I
to?
I don't think so. I have my license. I'm Keith. I'm going to be in your area soon. Um, I'm in the process of getting my license in Oregon. We'll see what that looks like. Mainly just because I have real estate that I need to develop there. So
Yeah,
that was the goal behind that. Makes it a little easier on me. Um, I really think that I want to put out as much information out there as possible. What I want is 20, 30 years from now, when I'm done and out of the trades, for people to still be watching something that I taught this long ago. And that's YouTube is timeless. I get comments every single day on one of the biggest videos that I've ever put out that was put out in 2018. That video still gets watched every single day, and I love that because it's helping people. And I think that I want to continue putting out stuff like that. I really don't like custom home building turnkey. That whole process can be a nightmare. And I don't know. I think I want to continue the YouTube path for a while just because I enjoy it. And you never know. Maybe we get into it. I got a buddy in LA that really wants me to partner up with him. So it might happen.
that'd be a cool journey to watch though. I'm liking all the videos that you're putting out though.
There's a ton of them right now.
You're really ramping up, man.
Oh, we're cranking it out. We're 4 Red Bulls a day and we're powering on through.
How's it
Uh,
feel not to edit 3 YouTube videos a week?
It's enjoyable. I got the girls' quads. We've been ripping around on those. I got their quads. And then I bought mine the next day with out my wife's approval, which was really cool. That was fun. I slept on the couch for 2 days, but I have a quad, so that's worth it.
So did you just ask for forgiveness instead of permission? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. I've trespassed on plenty of properties, and I know for a fact it's better. So I went that same approach. But that was a big thing. And if we can end off with one thing, it would be that time passes so quick. I still feel like I'm 22 and Avery's 12 years old. My she's going into middle school. My youngest is blown through kindergarten and is about to go to first grade. Time passes so quick. And what I don't want is to get to the end of all this. And regardless of what I have, regardless of how well we've done, think, shit, they're grown and out of the house. Like, what do we do? Pop out fucking 4 more? And like, you don't do that. You got to be present for the ones you got.
What a mic drop. As
Keith,
always,
blown away.
we gotta wrap up with our fast five since we're here on the tail end. That's something that we always do, and we're going to keep it rolling.
I'm not going to look at them. You tell me what they are.
Oh, I'm going to. Guys, before or at the end of every episode, we wrap up and we end with a fast five. It's 5 questions to be answered in a sentence or less, sometimes serious, sometimes entertaining, and everything in between. So, number 1, you're kind of a living example of the next generation. What's one thing that you want the youth to know about the trades?
The more you know, the less you work.
Touche. Number 2, since Matt loves these unserious ones, if you could be an animal, which one could you be, or would you be?
A snail.
A snail. Wow. Patience, my friend, right?
I just want the big googly eyes.
Number 3, if construction tools could talk, which one do you think would have the most interesting stories to tell?
Oh, a sawzall. A reciprocating saw. 100%.
Number 4, if your tool belt could magically dispense any snack or beverage, what would you want it to produce?
Man, you really thought about these ones. I would have like a little pouch on the side with a straw that came up for some Red Bull, like a little, what are those
Like
called?
a Red Bull
Camelbacks?
Camelback.
Yeah,
It's like those drink hats. You know what I'm talking about? The people who wear
from
it like
freaking
football games.
SpongeBob.
Yeah, I guess. That's not ringing a bell, but I'm picturing the football stadiums where
He
people
was
have it.
number 1. They had the hat on with the freaking. I'll send you a
Maybe
link.
that should be our cover photo for this podcast episode. Is that SpongeBob graphic?
Yes.
That's perfect. All right. Number 5. We're actually doing 6. We're gonna give you a bonus one. If you woke up one morning and found out your hammer had gained the ability to speak, what's the first thing you would ask it?
Oh, where the heck did you come up with these questions? Oh, that is so off the wall. I would ask it what the first thing it wants to bang is, and then we'd go do that.
I love it.
You got to keep it happy.
Gotta keep it on brand, baby. Number 6. Since we always ask this one, Matt, and we're gonna keep this running and we're gonna keep it alive and well, what does Bred to Build mean to you?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how anybody has ever answered this question because it's a little difficult. I think everybody's answer to this is different. To me, my family's been in this for a long time. I feel like my father and my mother genuinely bred to where he could have cheaper labor. And that's what I believe Bred to Build is. It's a family thing. It's how my family's made money for generations and hopefully continues down that path.
Oh God, I love you, Matt. Guys, thanks so much for joining us on the Bred to Build podcast. Matt, before we let you off the hook, we got to do our routine. Where can people find and connect with you?
Thank you guys for having me. For one, it's nice to be back. Season
Yeah.
2 is off to a killer start.
Let's go.
You guys can find me on all social platforms at MattBangsWood. More specifically on YouTube. There's a lot of stuff dropping out there. Go check it out.
You're growing quick too, man. We're excited for the episodes. Guys, thanks for listening to another episode of the Bred to Build podcast. If you like this episode, you like what we're doing, drop an awesome review, subscribe. If you had topics that you'd like us to cover, just send us a message on Instagram at the Bred to Build podcast. And if you want to follow us on social media, you can find me on all platforms at Brett Goen, at Hammer, and Keith. Let everybody know where.
At Keith Calloway Jr. or at K&L Industries on every social outlet.
Let's go. And also, if you want to learn more about Keith, check out episode 35. Guys, we'll see you next time on the Bred to Build podcast. We always do
Gotta
that
clap it
clapping.
out.
Clap it out, baby.